Hi and welcome back to the Shamrock Quilt Studio. Today we're working on our Design a Quilt. It's been a while since we've looked at this one, but I had a few minutes today to sit down and revisit the plans that we had for this and the materials and looking at what our next step needs to be. So join us right after this and I'll show you what I did today. We'll be right back. And welcome back to the Shamrock Quilt Studio. Well, hi and welcome back. Now, today we're talking about our Design Your Own Quilt. And as you recall, and you may have to dig back in your memory a bit because it has been a while since we worked on this one. This is going to be a lap size-ish quilt. And it's going to be a little different from the others we've done in that it's on a mainly black background. This fabric has some little bees printed on it, which I just thought would be adorable for the background of this quilt. Now, what we're putting on it, we're putting a huge sunflower on it. And when we last visited this, we had these pieces constructed. They're ready to go on the backing, except for one thing. We talked about putting a little mini petal between the center of the sunflower, where the seeds would be, and the petals. So today, I was able to cut out kind of a prototype of that little petal that's going to be shown. So it's going to be a double ruffle almost. It's going to have a little ruffle right around the inside. And that's most likely going to sit with at least one petal between where each of these join. And it probably will have a couple of extra petals as well. So I've got that cut, and I initially said I needed to make 10 of these. I think I'm going to make 12 to 14 of them to see that we can't get a nice full row of petals there. So that's going to be that, and that's going to fit in there just like that. Excellent. And then here's the piece we're going to use for the big stem of this flower. And that's going to run down this way. Now this is going to be moved up a little bit on the fabric so we can have a quilt that is at least 5 feet long. And then it will be somewhere up to 42 inches wide, because that's the width of the fabric, and I don't want to piece it, so we're going to keep it there, and then our length will be a proportional length. So this is going to be the stem, and I think I'm going to sew a seam down about 1.25 inches to 1.5 inches on this. And then I'm just going to trim that seam and then press it so that the seam is back behind the fabric. So we have like a little tube that's going to come down. And that'll be about 1.25 inches to 1.5 inches wide. That's going to be really simple to do. You won't have to turn anything. You just press it so that when you press it, that seam sits on top, and you can press it open or to one side. I probably press it open, and then when I sew it on, that seam will go down. So that's going to be the stem here, and it's going to be pretty much a straight line. It may have just a little bit of a curve to it, but it won't be much, because usually sunflowers do a pretty good job of standing up on a really sturdy stem. So we have that planned out and pinned and ready to sew. We have the little mini petals for the sunflower ready to cut out, and I'm going to use, it was going to be, I think, this fabric for that mini petal. So it will be a little deeper than the other petals, but still in that same color family. And you would expect, I don't know what I've got on my finger. I must have written on it. That's probably disturbing if you're looking at it, but nevertheless. So those are going to be our little little small petals around the inside of that, like that. Okay, let's move on then. The next thing we need to work on is our coneflower. And let's see, what fabric were we going to use on that? And I think I might have mixed up our flowers. I'm not sure. We may have enough of this to do it out of this one. I think this would be pretty if we could do it. I think we do. Let's see. That's the longest petal. Okay, we'll make our petals for our coneflower out of this solid yellow. It's going to be almost like a black-eyed Susan, but it's going to have a little bit of a influence of a coneflower or an echinacea in the way that it sits and the way it's kind of profiled. And so those will be the petals, and we'll sit that here. And then I'm trying to decide which fabric I want to use for the center. And there's so many good choices here. We have this kind of orange with the a little bit of red in it. We have a pure orange. I think this is too stark, so I think we're going to eliminate that. Then I have a more of a red with a leaf pattern in it. And then I have this kind of rusty color. I think the red is too red, so we'll eliminate that. So we're down to these two. So the question is, which one's going to look the best? I think I'm going to go with this one here. This one, I like this one, but it doesn't have any tones that we find anywhere else. Whereas with this one, I think that this light orange here really blends well with this, and it also kind of gives us the same kind of vibe as this, a dark background with a light pattern versus a medium background with the dark pattern. So this is our winner. So what we're going to do, let's see if you'll catch this up on the overhead. This is going to be the center of the coneflower, and that's going to be this fabric. I'll just tuck that there. And then we're going to have 3 different kinds of petals. Let me just mark those real quick so I know which one goes under the center. We've got a petal that's going to come out right, almost horizontal. We're going to have a couple of little drop petals, probably 2 of those. And then we're going to have 3 of these little center petals. And then we'll have those on the other side. So this will be our little coneflower slash black-eyed Susan. And that will be in these fabrics. And it will sit right about here. This is going to be a little, you're going to have to use your imagination. Look, there's that finger too. Oh my goodness, what have I gotten into? I was doing some crafts painting earlier, so maybe that was it. So those petals here, and then we're going to need to find a stem for this, and we also need to do some leaves. So we have a little bit of work cut out for us in cutting out the finalized pattern. This is just kind of a sketch to show us our scale and our shape. And I'll want to check this to make sure it's somewhat symmetrical. The petals, not too much. I think as long as they're roughly the right shape, we should be okay. And I think maybe this one, my initial thought was to make it a little more flat, and I think I'm going to go with that. So just take off just a little bit, just a little flatter here. And I think that's going to be a better fit. Okay, so that's our progress on this. I find that this project is a little more challenging because I'm having to create it all from scratch. That's the whole thought process behind this. And it's something quite different from what I see. You see some art quilts that are more fabrics in a more realistic look. And you see quilts that are flowers that are more more simplistic or like something you would see in a coloring book, just little shapes, just like we used to draw flowers as a kid. And those are very charming. I'm really drawn to those in a lot of ways. This one, I'm looking for something that's somewhere in the middle, something that is a bit artistic, but not so much that we're stressing over the details of it. So I have fabric choices and patterns for the coneflower and for this piece, which I'm going to go ahead and put with this fabric. And I'm going to pin them together because the last time I just left them loosey-goosey, I lost track of what I was doing. So we will, ooh, there's a really bent pin. We're going to pin these all together. We're going to have to do that, a couple of different pins there, so that we know where we are. This, like I said, this is going to be like a lap quilt size, so we're not stressing too much over the size of it. And I am excited too. I have some black quilting threads, so I'm very interested to see what it's like to hand quilt black thread on a mostly black background. I've heard that it's difficult because it's hard to see, so we'll kind of experiment on that themselves. I did see some fabric when I was out shopping earlier in the week that will be great for a back piece for this quilt. It was, as I recall, it was a dark background. It might have been black with little dash marks in yellow that reminded me of like a bee's path that it took. That would just be darling for the back of that. And we may look into that. The jury's still out whether we'll do a bee on this or not, so I will let you know as we go along. I appreciate your patience in coming back for this video after such a long break. Sometimes that's how things happen. We have other things that kind of pop up and take more of an urgent importance in the scheme of things, and then some things that have to kind of wait until you have time. And as I saw on the calendar that we had an extra Wednesday this month, I wanted to bring this back in so we could take a look at it and make a little progress with it. Thanks so much for joining me today. I hope you've enjoyed this video. If you did, please give me a thumbs up. Be sure to subscribe to the channel, and we'll see you next time at the Shamrock Quilt Studio. Bye.